I would like to acknowledge the Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians of this land. I would also like to honour and pay respect to the elders of this land, past, present and future, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians and fellow students. I would also like to forewarn that my story may include images of past deceased persons. The Kulin Nation, who has lived in this area for 40,000 years, is an alliance of 5 Indigenous Australian tribes in south-central Victoria. I live on the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria, the land of the Boon Wurrung people. Their territory stretches from Werribee, expanding north as well as continuing east and south along the Mornington Peninsula. The specific clan that lived in this area are the Boon Wurrung Bollock. I set out to find evidence of the valuing of Indigenous people and their cultures in my local environment, but sadly there wasn't much. I travelled to the area of the first European settlement in 1803 of the Port Phillip district. At this time it was approximated that there was 500 Boon Wurrung people. By 1863 there were only 11 left. In 1877 the last full-blooded Boon Wurrung, Jimmy Dunbar, died. If not for the sealers that kidnapped Boon Wurrung women, taking them to the Bass Strait Islands, forcing them into sexual partnerships, and to capture seals, all Boon Wurrung people would be gone today. Walking around this area that is dominated by information on the European settlement, with 2 small sections about the Boon Wurrung people, highlights to me how obvious it is that the dominant group in Australia has created this area. From here I went to the Sorrento Museum in the hope of finding some recognition of Aboriginal history and culture. The museum was made up of 4 large rooms. Sadly, less than a quarter of one room was designated to the Boon Wurrung people. To me, just an example of the tokenism that exists within Australia. By giving so little to the Aboriginal culture and true history, only supports the past and future socio-cultural racism and legitimises the unequal relationships that exist. What is shown here and around the community fits the education I received. It's all about colonisation. The fact that people were here first is irrelevant. What inhumane acts were committed have been swept under the carpet, just like the human rights of the Aboriginal people. I think about the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the fact that Aboriginal people are the longest continuing surviving culture in the world. I think that this should be celebrated, recognised and respected. Yet my experience of research and examining of my community has not highlighted any of this. How many would even know this declaration exists? How many realise what went on during the colonisation of Australia? How many care? If recognition of what occurred is the start to change, then I believe the valuing and culture of Aboriginal people would be obvious. I consider the fact that Aboriginal people have to fight for human rights. How can this be so? They are human. I reflect on what has occurred since 2007 and the need for self-determination. How can someone who has not experienced the history know what needs to be done? Self-determination should be not something to fight for, it should be a given. As I drive back home past the concrete jungle, with interspersed paddocks and occasional glimpses of the original bush, I reflect upon my own family's experiences with marginalisation and being dispossessed as Czech Jews during World War II, and the continued prejudices and discriminations even today. Can things change?